You.
Awesome. Absolutely. All right. Paige Alcoholic. And hi, buddy. And where we're going to be picking up is on page 47. And where we will be starting fresh is that was great news for us. But because the last paragraph in We Agnostics that we spoke about last week kind of delved us into the spiritual appendix, it's helpful to do review of we needed to ask ourselves about one short question. And the reason why it's so helpful to do a little bit of review about that paragraph in particular is this is where we get the first part of step 2. So step 2, part 1, as I like to call it. Another way to look at it is the first second step proposition. It gets a little tongue twisty as we get to the second step proposition. And right on that paragraph, we need to ask ourselves about one short question. So this is step 2, part 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share the Zoom screen and kind of help us have a little bit of a visual. Oh, I'm more in the way than I normally am. It says, we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe that there is a capital P power greater than myself? And that is step 2, part 1. So step 2, as it's written on the Zoom screen or on the, on the wall, if you're in it in person, or on page 58, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And we can break that down. The first part is to came to believe that a power greater than ourselves. Can I believe that there is a power that is greater than me? Or am I even willing to believe that there could be a power greater than me? It is that simple. And I'll tell you what my experience was. I came to rooms like this with wonderful people like you, people who had recovered. There was a light on in your eyes, a hope that was on in your spirit, and you had experienced a freedom that I did not know. And all I needed to believe was that that power could be available to me. That was it. That was all I needed to believe. That you had a power, that you believed, that something was working for you. I didn't need to know it. I didn't need to define it. I didn't need to comprehend it. I didn't need to understand it. All I needed to do was just believe, is it possible? Could it exist? And it says, as soon as a man can say he does believe or is even willing to believe, that we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us, which is to say a demonstration that we can start here. That upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. So from this place of there could be a power greater than myself, can I build the rest of my life? That's what we're talking about. And the rest of my spiritual life, it's fine if I get here and I don't have a spiritual life. It's fine if I get here and I'm not excited about God or higher power, or I come here with baggage, or I come here with misunderstanding, or I come here with belief. The second step is very simply the starting blocks. The starting blocks of a lifelong race. It's not the finish line. So we're just saying, can I start with there could be a power? And this proposition, as we get into the bottom of page 47, that just starting with there could be a power, I'm willing to believe, even willing to believe that there is a power that exists that's greater than me. That was great news for us, for we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles. Now, again, I take a bit of a, not super controversial, but I take a bit of a different track than a lot of people with spiritual principles. A lot of people talk about spiritual principles as these concepts behind the steps. Like honesty behind 1 or hope behind 2. Well, I look at it a little bit differently. I look at the spiritual principles instead as the tangible actions of the 12 steps. And so if we break down that sentence with that in mind, that was great news for us. For we had assumed that we could not work the steps unless we had already been jazzercised about God. Jazzercised is the official terminology. They used it frequently in the Oxford group. Nobody tell the history husbands that. I don't need to be corrected. But very simply, what we're saying is that's enough. That I don't need to understand God to work the steps. And it says, unless we accepted many things on faith which seem difficult to believe. I don't need to have a full definition, a full comprehension, a full understanding. And in my 1930s dictionary, to understand is to know through experience. So I could not have an understanding because I don't have experience. I build the experience as I work these 12 steps. So it says, it goes on to say, when people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes. But I cannot accept as surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. And maybe that's our experience. And I'm going to break it down in a more contextual AA sort of way. You know those people in AA that are happy and there is a light and they look like Mark Houston described it as wearing the world like a loose garment. They look like they wear the world like a loose garment. And I'm over here like, I'm strangling in my own skin. It doesn't fit. You know what I mean? I don't have that experience. And so what we're trying to say is that like people like that, we don't need to have their full understanding, their full conception, their full belief. We just got to believe that they have something working for them. And so it goes on to say, it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. We'll see that word commence a whole bunch, and we've seen it already. Commence is to begin. Again, we are starting at step 2. We don't need to have it figured out. In fact, we couldn't have it figured out at step 2. And if you're wondering, articles of faith, the many articles of faith that are so plain to him. Articles of faith would be the sort of belief structure of an organized religion. So certain religions believe that this is what God looks like, this is God's representative, this is how we talk to God, and these are some things that we believe about that. And what it's saying is like, we don't have to believe any of that. We don't have to be open to that. But we can get the same results that the people who have recovered before us get without having to believe what they believe. We get to start with, well, at least they believe, and I'm willing to do what they do. That's our starting place. So it says, besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith, we often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. Now, if you were like me when I got here, I didn't know what any of those words meant, and I didn't know I was being called out, because that's what it is doing, is calling me out. So when it talks about the seeming inability to accept much on faith, so we struggle with taking that leap of faith, and that is our experience. So many of us, we often found ourselves handicapped. To be handicapped in this context is to be held back by obstinacy. Obstinacy is stubbornness. I know, an alcoholic, stubborn. Who would have thought? Yeah, not you guys, not you lovely people, but that's what obstinacy is. And then sensitiveness. Now, let's have a look at sensitiveness, because for a long time I thought sensitive, and I actually used to joke. I'm like, I'm just sensitive, ha ha ha, until somebody called me out, which was rude and uncalled for and very helpful. See, the sensitive, what we're not talking about is, when you cry at those Thai insurance commercials. Actually, we were on a meeting the other day, and we put on one of those little commercials, those videos, and everyone was weeping. I had already seen it before, so I was just enjoying everyone's emotions. But that's not what we're, like the TV comes on, it's Sarah McLachlan in the arms of an angel, and we're just crying about puppies. That's not the sensitive we're talking about. The sensitive we are talking about is where we take things, I know you guys would never do this, you're not going to relate. We take things that aren't about us and we make it about us. When you go to a meeting and two people are talking and you walk in and then they stop talking and, they were talking about me. That is the sensitive that we're talking about, personalizing things. Now, I know you guys wouldn't ever, but perhaps in your journey you might come across a sensitive alcoholic or two. I know, they're so rare. And then unreasoning prejudice. And to have prejudice is to prejudge an experience I've not had. So it is, I know that that could not work for me, despite the fact that I've not had that experience. Another example would be me telling you, let me tell you what I think about South Carolina or Florida or Georgia. I'm looking at or the state of New York, all these places. And I've never been. And so I don't have, by the way, I have a feeling I would love all of them because I love you guys. But what we're talking about is I'm convinced it wouldn't work for me. I'm convinced it wouldn't help me. I'm convinced, but I have not had an experience with it. So to have prejudice is to have opinions on or to prejudge an experience I've not had. Now, the unreasoning prejudice looks a little like I am dying under the lash of alcoholism. My life is ruined. And I don't have to even lose material things for my life to be ruined. But my life is ruined. I am miserable and I can't face life successfully. I can't be happy. I can't be sober. Man, I'm doomed to drink again. I am not okay. But I know it's not going to work for me. And I see that it works for you. I see that there are people that are happy and sober at the same time. Their light is on in their eyes. The hope fills their spirit. They're able to laugh and not take themselves so seriously. And to be unreasoning prejudice is in spite of the evidence that is in front of me. I'm like, no, I'm not, God's not going to work for me. That's that unreasoning prejudice. So many of us, not you guys, have been so touchy. Touchy's another word for sensitive. Ooh, I'm making it about me. Many of us have been so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. And so that's that thing when you're in a meeting and somebody starts talking about God and we get the, we're talking about God, that. To bristle is to be filled with. And antagonism is that, come at me, bro, I want to fight you. That like wanting to be argumentative like that, like, you're going to do that. Like that's what it means to bristle with antagonism. I kind of don't always use words to define words. Sometimes I define words with vibes, which is how I do a lot of things. I sponsor based on vibes. I also budget based on vibes, which is apparently not what you're supposed to do with numbers. They won't let me do my taxes based on vibes, which I think is rude. All right. And it says this sort of thinking. So this is the book meeting us where we're at. We're going to show up to the chapter We Agnostics. We're going to show up to Alcoholics Anonymous, bristling with antagonism, handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. We are. But it's going to take us where we need to go, which is this sort of thinking had to be abandoned. It's gone. It is left. I'm not picking it up ever again. We have got to let go of it completely. And this is the book continuing to meet us where we're at. It says, though some of us resisted, some of us wanted to hold on to these ideas and these feelings, and no, it's not for me. We found no great difficulty in casting aside such feelings. And here is what helps me to let go of my old ideas. Here is what helps me to let go of my prejudice. It says, faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. And oftentimes when I'm struggling with anything in the program, it's a step 1 problem. Sometimes we'll say it's a step 4 problem or step 3 problem or step whatever. But it's a step 1 problem. Because if I understand step 1, and step 1 really puts a fire under my butt. Step 1 necessitates the rest of the steps. Step 1 is that I can never, ever safely drink again. And we can hold that up to our experience that we can never, ever safely drink again. So I have to stay sober. I need to stay sober. But step 1 is not simply that. Step 1 is I can never, ever safely drink again, and I will. The mental obsession means that I will drink again. And when I see in my life, step one, that I'm going to drink again, man, that's not good news. And that alcoholic destruction necessitates this opening up inside of me. Could there be a solution? And I don't have to like it. I don't have to be jazzercised about it, but could there be a solution? That's all I need to be open to. That's it. And it says, in that respect, alcohol was a great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. I used to joke that, that's why I got the hardcover big book, to bait the reasonableness into sponsees. I don't. We use our words. And the truth of the matter is, that's not my job. My job is not to be the great persuader. That is alcoholism's job. The responsibility of alcoholism is to beat me into a state where I have come to the end of myself. It is to beat me until I'm spiritually or physically black and blue and I got no other way. And it is from that place of coming to the end of myself, from that place of pain, from that place of hopelessness, that I awaken to the possibility that there could be another way. And it says, sometimes this was a tedious process. Those with high pain tolerances, absolutely. We hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as some of us were. Again, holding out old and often prejudices in regards to erroneous ideas, old ideas about experience I've not had that are wrong. That are wrong. We'll find that out in step 4, how wrong I was. But that's what we're talking about. It says the reader, and now here's where we transition into some examples. So it says the reader may still ask why he should believe in a capital P power greater than himself. We think there are good reasons. Let us have a look at some of them. And this is a transition period where, keep in mind, in 2025, I almost said 2024. In 2025, how do I turn my mind? How do I, get to this place? I can see that you guys are happy and sober. I can see that you have something I don't have. And that begins to be enough to open me up. But if I were to get a copy of this book in 1940, it was published in 1939, maybe I get a copy in 1940, 1941, there is no other sober alcoholic in Calgary, Alberta. I don't know anyone who has recovered. And all I have, I'm alone. There's no meetings, there's no Zoom, there's nothing but a copy of this book. And I get a copy of this book, and I'm going through this book to follow its direction so I can recover. What the book is doing is it is giving me good reasons why I should change my mind about my old ideas. And actually, some of my sponsees talk about how I got this spiritual jujitsu or judo, where it's like I show up and it's like, whoop, and we do a flip. And that's actually what's happening here. You don't have to write in your book spiritual jujitsu unless you want to, because that sounds fun. But what we're doing is we are taking a lot of our defenses, our prejudices about why there could not be a God, and we're using those exact same prejudices to flip us on our head on why we should believe, or at least be open. And so that, spiritual ninjas, woo, doing the martial arts, that's what's happening. And so we'll look for those beliefs and we'll look for those flips. We'll look and we'll see the jiu-jitsu. So now this next paragraph, I always want to read it because I imagine it's meant to, like, how it was meant to be said, which is like in a 1940s, like a transatlantic, like newspaper sort of news reporter accent, where it's like, the practical individual of today, see, is a stickler for facts and results. Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accept theories of all kinds. I kind of want to do that. The practical individual, that's the vibe. But what they're saying is the regular person is looking for facts and results. So what we're saying, what our barrier is, like, I don't see facts. I don't see this God. That's a little airy-fairy, And so it says, nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they are firmly grounded in fact. We have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. Now, I'll be honest, when I first read that, I was like, what the heck does electricity have to do with my alcoholism? Like, it made absolutely no sense to me. I didn't get it. I didn't what are we talking about? And keep in mind, electricity was something that in Bill Wilson's lifetime went from a concept or an idea to something that was practically in their home. And this electricity is what we're using it is to jujitsu or to judo, the prejudice. And so when it talks about, we have numerous theories, example about electricity. So we might have numerous theories, for example, about God. But if I, like with God, if I'm like, no, there's no God, there's no electricity, well, I'll tell you, I'm not going to be on the Zoom call for very long because this computer's got to be plugged into the wall. It hasn't got a battery life, If I do not start with a reasonable assumption that electricity exists, then I don't get to use that electricity. And it's just like this with the power that is God. And I love that it talks about, simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use. And that's what begins to happen with this power, which is God. We don't start there at step 2, but we begin to have that experience. I begin to see that power, which is God. Oftentimes I encourage sponsees to go on what I like to call God walks, or if they got to go to Costco or something, I'm like, invite God with you. And then, watch for God. I love watching for God at the airport. There's something where it's like there's the undeniable presence of God at the airport. But I will only see God if I'm watching for God. And actually, some of you guys know, I'm a bit of all of you know I'm a bit of a weirdo. What I mean by that is I like birds. And I know you don't have to be a bird person, but if I were to, and I've done this with sponsees, they don't find this funny, but I'm like, hey, now I don't know exactly, we got a huge bird range from people all over the world at this point, but I'm just, bear with me. If I was like, hey, how many red-breasted nuthatches did you see today? You're going to tell me, what is that? It sounds like you said a dirty word. What are you talking about? I'm not looking. And even if it was how many pigeons did you see today? We know what a pigeon is. I believe a Eurasian rock dove is the technical term, but pigeon. But it's I don't know. I'm not watching for pigeons. So I don't know what I'm looking for, or I do, and I'm simply not looking. And so that's often the issue is I am not looking for this power. And then it says feel. And that is almost the first place that we begin at beginning to access this power is in feeling. So often God comes to us as a feeling more than anything else. And then it says it direct. And that doesn't mean I sit in the director's chair and I'm telling God what to do. What I mean is channeling God. You guys know that St. Francis prayer, step 11 prayers, it's often known, but it comes out of the 12 and 12. And it talks about make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love. And so I'm trying to take the love that is not my own and channel that love. Another way to look at it is a little like I'm called to be the moon, whereas I don't have my own light. But what I'm called to do is reflect that light of God, to polish the mirror. And that is how we direct God's power. Not like light with a mirror, not let me tell you what I need, God, and get it for me, toot sweet, And then simply because it is impossible to see, direct, feel, and use. This is a power that I use. This power that is God is not an over there idea. It is not a conception. It is something that is practical and tangible and works in my life. And just like electricity, I can talk about it. I got cell phone, and actually I kind of messed it up, so I actually do got to plug it in. It's only working on slow charge. I messed it up, so I'm not even it won't even fast charge. And what I got to do is I can pontificate my ideas about electricity, even though we don't really see electricity. You can see it in lightning, and you can see it in static electricity, but by and large we don't see electricity. By and large, I mean, you can feel it a little if, when there's like electricity around, like static electricity. But what will happen is I need power. I really do. I'm at 42%. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. But like, I need power. And if I stay stuck that I don't understand electricity couldn't work for me. This cell phone is not getting charged. It's going to die just like I am. I've got to plug myself into the power, and then I can have the experience of the power. That is the order. And so it says everybody nowadays believes in scores of assumptions for which there is good evidence but no perfect visual proof. So what is the argument that we're going to jujitsu is, I don't see God. I can't see God. I can't believe in something I can't see. And it's saying, well, everybody nowadays believes in scores of assumptions for which there's good evidence but no perfect visual proof. We as a society believe in lots of things that we can't see. We just spoke about electricity. We can see the results of it, just like we can see the results of God, but we don't always see it working. And it says, and does not science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof? Ooh, it's saying like seeing, not believing, especially for us. It says it is being constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world, that outward appearances are not inward reality at all. And it's not talking about alcoholics, but how true is that for us? The outward appearance, the wall, the mask, the ego and image that I'm trying to maintain is a far cry for what's really happening on the inside. But what it's saying is what we see with our eyes is not really what's going on. And could that not be true in the spiritual world? So it says, to illustrate, it says the prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speeds. These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt it. And I'm sure everyone here is like, oh yes, that makes perfect sense. I understand all of that completely. I don't need further explanation. Prosaic steel girder, I know what that is, right? No. It's like, what the heck are we talking about? You already lost me at electricity. So prosaic just means basic, average, run-of-the-mill. And a steel girder is a metal I-beam. And just to help illustrate the point, I made this. Meet Prosy, the prosaic steel girder. So that he's just a little metal I-beam. Yeah, this is what I do when I have a modicum of spare time. Is it the best use of time? Probably not, but it is a use of it, and here we are. So I made this. It's this mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speed. That's what Prosy's saying. So look at me. And so what are we talking about? So there's this metal solid I-beam. Now keep in mind the big book. Bill Wilson is dictating to Ruth Hawk just across the Hudson, and she's typing out the big book. And at this time, New York, we getting some skyscrapers. So he's seeing the constructions. He's seeing it get built. So he's seeing all these like metal I-beams as these steel, skyscrapers are rising into the sky. And he's like, that. Now to our eyes, what we see is something that is absolutely solid, that is strong, and that is unmoving. And then scientists come in and say, nah, girl, that's not it. What it is did you know it's made up of these things called atoms? And actually, that's kind of what's in his hand, is a visual description of a diagram of an atom. And an atom, what it has a nucleus, which has protons and neutrons. And what flies around the atom are these things called electrons. And each atom has all this movement. And do y'all know that there is more space in between the atoms than there are atoms themselves? So this prosaic steel girder, this hunk of metal that we're like, it's solid and it's unmoving. Science comes in and says, nuh-uh, it's made up of these, so much space in between the atoms, and there's these electrons that are moving. And we changed our mind, and we believed it. Because there are people who had more experience than us. I have not seen an electron. Like, I've seen pictures of them, I'm sure. I've seen diagrams of them, probably. But I've never looked at an electron with my little eyeballs. I've never done that. But when scientists, people who have more experience, people who are further along in the journey of science tell me, yeah, no, dude, the thing that you believed, flip it, 180, you're wrong, girl. I'm like, oh, I'm wrong, and I'm open-minded to that belief. And that's what it's saying. So we have no problem believing things that we cannot see if we start with the assumption. That's what we're talking about. And so the prosaic steel girder, is a helpful learning turn. I know. I'm unsupervised. Nobody in my life is supervising me closely enough to be like, don't do that, Paige. So it says, when, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that underneath the material world and life as we see it, just like underneath the metal I-beam, there is more going on, that underneath life as we see it, there is an capital A, capital P, capital G, capital C, capital I, all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence. Right there, our perverse streak comes to the surface, like our sick little, antagonistic, contrarian, no, I'm not open, comes to the surface. And we laboriously means like we're really working on it. Welcome, we're on page 49, first full paragraph. We're working laboriously, we laboriously set out to convince ourselves it isn't so. We read wordy books and indulge in windy arguments, thinking we believe this universe needs no God to explain it. Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere. That life comes from a vacuum, there's no meaning to it, and it ends in a vacuum. And so when we talk about, the perfectly logical assumption that underneath the material world and life as we see it, could there not be a power underneath that? And we talk about science and changing our mind. This is the funeral card for my aunt. And my Aunt Sharon, she was an electrochemist. And so she, this is her obituary. You see, I'll grab some excerpts from it. She was a smarty pants. That's not me, that is her. She was a smarty pants. And for somebody to have this as a thing, what I will point out, type A personality. I'm a B right over here. You know what I mean? So type A personality, and she was diagnosed with cancer, and she learned that it was terminal. And because of her personality, she planned her whole funeral. And in some of the descriptions of some of the things she did, where it talks about, she was adjunct professor in the School of Biomedical Engineering at Dalhousie University and in the Department of Chemistry at the University of Guelph, and co-supervised graduating students and the School of Engineering in McGill University. It talks about how she was her work was funded continuously throughout her career by the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, and she was on all these boards. Her accomplishments were recognized by the Chemical Institute of Canada, and talks about the Chemistry Society, and she was the head of the Sciences Department at the University of Acadia. So And again, I'm just saying, I had to have God come into my life to get me to stop wetting my pants. That's who I am. I'm not like, ooh, look at me. She's the smarty pants. Now this, like all of this, and she understood. Yeah, she was on the International Society of Electrochemistry. And she understood the world and atoms and molecules and all these things in a level, in a way that I will absolutely never, just could never, would never, absolutely could not. And again, she planned her whole funeral, and in her funeral card is, "The Lord is my shepherd, and be still my soul." And it's a reminder for me. It doesn't have to be a reminder for you, but it's a reminder for me. If there is somebody who is that smarty pants and who understands the world at a level that I will never understand, can have faith that there could be a power greater than myself, who am I to say no? You know what I mean? Who am I? And a lot of times we hear people say there's people, nobody's too dumb to get this thing, but there are people who are too smart. And that is not my experience. I don't think anyone is too smart to get this thing. I think we think we're too smart to get this thing. I got my old ideas that my intellectualism can keep me sober. And so, that actually, natural segue, I rarely do those. Lovely. It goes on saying, instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, we agnostics and atheists chose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and end of all. Alpha and Omega was the start, beginning letter and the ending letter of the Greek alphabet. So the beginning and the end. Rather vain of us, wasn't it? That my intelligence is the pinnacle of like the best that we can get. Again, I need God to stop me from burning my life to the ground on the regular, I need God. And to be fair, at this point in the book, I'm just beginning to open to that. But the idea that the best that I can come up with must be the best, that's just not the case. And we see that in nature. Actually, how often do we throughout history have had, let us do nature things. Let us, put a dam here, do a thing here, and then cue a couple years later the ecological disaster. You know what I mean? I'm not like, I cannot possibly be the last word. So it says, we who have traveled this dubious path beg you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. Oh, what a big ask. What a big ask. Don't worry, it's going to help us get there. We have learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, and there are faiths that are riddled with human frailties, like defects, and there's a lot of bad that has come, from organized religion. It's not arguing that. And keep in mind, we might be just not even fighting organized religion. We might just be fighting the idea that people recover, and that the people that are happy and talking about God in the same sentence is like, no, lay aside prejudice. And it says, we've learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. Let's pause and ask ourselves, did we have much purpose and direction when we got here? And actually, if I still have it queued up, I do. It's from the previous Big Book study. This was the only direction I was in. I was in a boat with only one oar. I was in that cycle. I was going around in circles. I was pretty directionless and pretty purposeless. That's what I was like. And then, so it says, people of faith have a logical idea of what life is all about. Did I have any logical idea of what life was all about when I got here? I won't speak for you, but I will tell you absolutely not. Absolutely not. No idea. And I did have what I wanted and good motives, but man, I couldn't live up to those. And it says, actually, we used to have no reasonable conception, whatever. Oh man, calling me out. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices. Have I relate to that? judging people from different backgrounds or different religions, or judging people from a religion that was pushed on us growing up. When we might have observed, which observation is a part of science. See, what we're saying is, I don't see God, but here's what we can observe. Observed that many spiritually minded persons, so that's not even religious, spiritually minded persons of all races, colors, and creeds. A book written in 1939. Everyone. Were demonstrating. So spiritually minded people across all races, ethnicities, cultures, countries, languages, all of those things were demonstrating. Demonstrating. It's not a belief. It is a demonstration. And again, I talk about that a lot because I am called to be a demonstration of this power. I'm not called to tell you what I think about God or what I believe, or even like, or what is my conception? That doesn't matter. I am called to be a demonstration of that power. That is what matters. Demonstrating, and we can ask ourselves, did we have this when we got here? Demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness, which we should have sought ourselves. I'll tell you, I wasn't very stable. Like it was not, I joke that because I do have vertigo, but like, I had some real like life vertigo before I got here, stability was not me. Happiness. I think I've shared this. I can't always remember where I've shared things, so forgive me if I've told you this before. It was a couple of years ago. I think it was, just a couple of years. Like 5 years ago. 5 years ago, just a couple, I was visiting family, and we went to a neighbor's place, and we were having like a barbecue, and kids were running around, and we were like playing games and stuff, and I suggested a game of gratitude alphabet, and that's where you go around the circle. I would start with A, something I'm grateful with that starts with A, and the next person would pick something that's grateful for that starts with B. It's not really a competitive game, but I play to win. I'm gonna win that gratitude alphabet, yeah. And so we go around and we're playing that, and these are non-alcoholic people. These are normal folks that are having one drink and enjoying their evening, and they're having a lovely time. And we get around and to the letter J, and I get the letter J, and I say, I am grateful for joy. Because in the last few years, I've really been able to experience for the first time in my life joy. And I was talking about how incredible that was. And this is how I know you guys are my people. Because you guys, I can see you're like, oh, that's so lovely. Oh, how wonderful. The normal people were horrified. I look up and they're like, what? Well, like I ruined their day. They're like, what do you mean in the last few years? What do you mean? And I didn't even mean to be a killjoy with that one, And so, like, I remember when I got sober, I wanted to be happy. And that was the best that I could do on my own power. So I definitely did not have happiness and usefulness. I wanted to be useful. I wanted my life to have meaning and purpose, but man, I was spinning out in those tires. I couldn't get any traction with anything. My life had no meaning and no purpose. And so there are people who are spiritually minded, who are demonstrating stability, happiness, and usefulness. And that's what I need. I don't have those. Now, for those of us who have recovered, our responsibility is to be a demonstration of those things, a demonstration of God's power. So it says, instead, we looked at the human defects of these people and sometimes use their shortcomings as a basis of wholesale condemnation. I'm sure nobody would have ever done that in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Maybe this one, it's like, oh, Paige, she's so wordy and she goes on too many tangents. AA is not for me, Or when I got here, I would see people that were like happy, and I'm like, oh, they just think they're better than everyone. They just don't hate themselves with an unparalleled vitriol that I lived my life submerged in. Just, trying to get my neck above, absolute self-hatred. That's where I was living. And it says, we talked of intolerance while we were intolerant ourselves. Oh, that is one of the most clear examples of the judo. Flip! We're saying, oh, some of these religious people are so intolerant. Hey girl, you know when you're judging all religious people based on the actions of a few, does that not sound a little like intolerance? And when you think you're better than them, just like they're acting like they're better than others, flip! Rude! Rude! Who did that? It says we missed the reality and the beauty of the forest because we were diverted by the ugliness of some of its trees. Do we ever see a tree and we miss the majesty that is the forest? One cantankerous alcoholic does not prevent the joy that we find here. And actually, I have this thing with a home group member and a friend of mine, where when I'm out and about and I see ugly trees, like ones that have like almost fallen over and then regrown or like hit by lightning and are still barely hanging on, I take a picture and I send it to her and I'm like, this tree is alcoholism. A little alcoholic tree that just keeps going, you know? So it's perfectly reasonable if you don't want to keep coming back or be my friend, because it's like all birds and trees and stuff. Fun times. Alrighty. So it says, we never gave the spiritual side of life a fair hearing. So this whole part of life we weren't even open to. We wouldn't even explore the woods. We wouldn't even believe trees existed because there were some people who were not demonstrating. And so it says, in our personal stories, you will find a wide variation in the way each teller approaches. See, step 2 is the beginning of the approach, and conceives of the capital P power which is greater than himself. So we might not agree on certain conceptions. Don't worry about that. Conception doesn't matter. Experience is what matters, right? Whether we agree with a particular approach or conception seems to make little difference. Experience, that's what carries weight. Experience has taught us that these are matters about which, for our purpose, we need not be worried. We don't got to overthink it. We don't got to overcomplicate it. We don't got to be like worried about what do you believe in or whatever. These are questions for each individual to settle for themselves. But I just got to start with a belief. Now, if I just start with there could be a power, and I take the actions that are outlined in the book, that will get settled. I promise. It will get settled. Now, we're talking about this wide variation, these stark differences in approaches, in beliefs, perhaps even in religious faiths, wide variations, no religion, some religion. But it says on one proposition, however, these men and women are strikingly agreed. You'll come to a business meeting, you'll find out that we as a people don't agree on much. But there's one thing that all of us who have recovered, now it's referring to the stories in the back. But I also think it's all, whenever it talks about the we, we're talking about the first 100, but the more of us who have recovered, I believe we get included in the we. Because our stories are told in this book. Our stories are told as we see, yeah, I got that allergy. Yeah, I've got that mental obsession. That's me. And we take this course of action and we read these promises and it's like, yeah, that happened to me. Yeah, that happened to me. I get to be a part of the we. And so on one proposition, however, these men and women are strikingly agreed. Those of us who have recovered from this illness, we agree on one thing. We might not agree on a whole lot, but we've got this one thing. Every one of them has gained access to and believes in a capital P power greater than himself. And I always want to point out, gained access to comes before believes in. You might think it should be the opposite, because that's sort of the natural order of things. I come to believe that there could be a power. That, I'm not even believing in it in step 2, I'm believing that a power. And then as a result of that, I take action and that builds. And I'm able to gain access. But I believe the reason we have gain access to is because that is far more important than what I believe. What I believe cannot keep me sober. What I believe can only lead me back to drinking. It is what I gain access to that keeps me sober. Access to that power. That is what I need for permanent contented sobriety. So gained access to comes first because I believe it's the most important. It says, this power has in each case accomplished the miraculous, the humanly impossible. And what is humanly impossible for an alcoholic of my type? Permanent, contented sobriety. Humanly impossible. And that's what's on offer. Now, I'm going to put an asterisk. That permanent contented sobriety is contingent on me continuing to live this way of life. I can't set it and forget it because I will wither away. That spiritual life will erode and I will drink again. But that's what's on offer, the humanly impossible, because it is humanly impossible for me as an alcoholic to stay sober. I cannot stay sober on human power. I can't do it. It does not work. We saw that in step 1. And so if I see that in step 1, well, I need something that is beyond human power. It seems it's a logical progression. It says, as a celebrated American statesman put it, let's look at the record. Now, who that person was Alfred Smith. He was the 4-time governor of the state of New York, and he actually ran for the presidency and lost. And the reason I sort of give us that background is also to sort of contextualize, like, why would we be, like, where does that come from? Like, what's going on? Well, he was the 4-time governor of the state of New York. Bill Wilson is in the city of New York, which is in the state of New York. Got a geography lesson in there. And so he would have been familiar with his governor. And the let's look at the record was like his political slogan. And what does it mean to say, let's look at the record? Let's look at the record is in reference to the evidence. Let's look at the evidence. Oftentimes we're like, oh, the higher power, that's airy-fairy. I'm really logical. I'm really rational. Well, let's look at what the evidence is. The record. What does the evidence demonstrate? Spoilers. It demonstrates that this works. That this higher power thing, it works. So it says here are thousands of men and women. We're talking about those who had recovered as the result of the 12 steps. They upped the numbers as the second edition came out, because more people had recovered. Worldly indeed is a part of the world. They're not locked up in a treatment center or a monastery. Although I think I could use a little bit of quiet time. Send me away to a hermitage. I could use some quiet. But they're a part of the world. They have lives and families and jobs. And it says they flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a capital P power greater than themselves, since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, that is step 2, part 1. I believe that there is a power greater than myself. To take a certain attitude toward that power. That attitude is step 2, part 2. That power keeps me sober. That power can remove that mental obsession. So in that sentence, what we are seeing is step 2. So since they have taken the 12 steps, or taken the second step, and then it says, and do certain simple things. The certain simple things, 12 steps. That's what they are. 12 steps. So I got to believe that there could be a power. I got to believe that power could keep me sober. And I got to work these steps. And the result of the steps is there has been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. And that is a spiritual awakening. We know because it follows the 12 steps, but a revolutionary change in the way in which I live, way of life, and the way I think. And I can't change that with my thinking. I need this power. It says, in the face of collapse and despair, in the face of the total failure of their human resources. Now that is a step 1. Come to the end of myself. My human resources, they don't work. They don't keep me sober. It does not work. They found a new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowed into them. Now that is a spiritual awakening. a new sense of, a new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction that flows into me. Again, part of why I love the St. Francis prayer. And it says, this happened this happened after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. Again, if you're like, I don't believe you, it's a spiritual awakening. Well, it happens after I meet a set of requirements. The requirements are the 12 steps. So it says, once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, was that my experience? I was confused. What's the point of life? Life seemed hopeless. They showed the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. And here at step 2, we're beginning to dive into the spiritual malady. The spiritual malady is the conscious sense of separateness from God. And we don't talk about that a lot in step 1, because in step 1, we want to focus on what makes us different. There are other human beings who have the spiritual malady, but that is what we are treating. And that's what we're talking about, because we're laying aside the drink question. And it says they show how the change came over them. The change is the spiritual awakening. When many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the capital P, capital G, presence of God is today the most important fact of their lives, they present a powerful reason why one should have faith. And that's a line. Is the consciousness of the presence of God today the most important fact of my life? If it's not, that's okay. But we've got some work to get there, because that is what becomes true for us. So we'll leave it there, and I'll toss it over to you guys.